Hi, everybody. I am Michelle Esch. I am um, in my 30s now. I'm no longer just 30. I'm well into my 30s now. 30-year-old collie fancier. I live down in Spotsylvania, Virginia, which is right outside Fredericksburg. And I have been in this sport for my entire life. And when I say my entire life, before I was even a glimmer in my parents' eyes, before they even met each other, I was in dogs. So let me start back at the beginning. Um, so I'm actually third generation on both sides of my family. We'll start on the, so play on words on the sire side. So my dad and his dad and his mom started Verlour collies with breeding in 1969. Vernon and Laura Esch. At the time, it was very hip to do the combined names, so it was Verlour collies. Both of them are still alive and well. My grandpa just celebrated his 90th birthday, so maybe one day you'll see this, Grandpa. Happy birthday. But they started Verlour collies. They started breeding in 1969, but they didn't start actively showing at a national level until 1975. And that was after they had finished their first champion, Verlour's Mr. Midnight, which was their first champion. He was a big tri-rough male. I pulled out my library of champions. Let's see. That's him right there. Big dog. They finished him, let's see, 1974. And in 1975, my dad asked his dad if they could go out and talk to Dorothy Cantor of Lick Creek Collies, which also, depending on the area of the U.S. you're from, it's either Lick Creek or Lick Crick. So I always grew up thinking that it was Champion Verlour's Charmer of Lick Crick. And I got really confused when I read the name and I was like, Lick Creek. And then I realized that my grandma also says wash instead of wash. So, you know, dialect. But they went out and purchased Tracy, and she was their really big foundation bitch. Ooh. Tall, lanky, lots of neck. But she was a looker, and she was a looker enough to go ahead and take Best of Variety at the 1977 Dallas National with my dad handling. And one fun fact is that my dad actually doesn't have a picture of that win, because at the time he had sent it over to it was either Collie Cues or the Bulletin to advertise, and the picture was lost in the mail. And back then, they only gave you one photo. But I found it. Oop, there's a glare. Sorry. There he is, my dad, 1977. So nobody tell him if he's watching. Well, I just ruined your Father's Day gift, but I found the picture. I can't believe it. It's even on the back, it has her name. But the photographer's wife from that national actually ended up on one of the Collies Through Time page and posted the picture. And I was like, where did you get this? Nobody has it. And she turned out to be the photographer's wife. Weirdest thing. I'm shaking. I love that story. So I was able to get my hands on it this year and make a copy for my grandpa and make a copy for my dad. It's a piece of our history we just don't have in her file. So it's really cool. I get really jazzed about that kind of stuff. So we're going to leave that story there. And we're going to pick up on my mom's side, the dam side. Sue and Jim Carbach had been raising collies for about 20 years under the prefix of Sue Jim Collies. Again, you know, combined names. And my mom she did a little bit of showing, a very little bit. This is her when she is 3 years old. She won Best Groomed in Omaha, Nebraska. So, but she didn't really get into the scene until 1970. Sorry, I had to go back. Until about 1977, when she actually asked to buy a smooth. Imagine that, both families coming from roughs and switching over to smooths. They went out and purchased. Oh, I don't have a picture of her. I don't have a picture of her. Puppet. Champion Nostalgics, the Holy Grail. The Unholy Grail, sorry. In 1977, and she was my mom's first big smooth bitch. At the time, we also had Sue Jim's Mr. Wonderful, Hoss, his name is Hoss, who was this beautiful sable rough male, and I honestly don't know what his big one was. My dad's website actually went down, so I don't have that history. If anybody knows what Haas's big thing was, let me know. That'd be great. So in 1977, my mom ended up at Dallas at the National with Puppet and watched my dad go Best of Variety with Tracy, and the two kids from Northern and Southern Illinois met up, and January 1978, they got married. So they started Signet after that. They chose Signet because Mick and Mick Tur and Mick Tess, they don't really sound great. He got a major under Steve Field. Thanks, Candy. Appreciate that one. So sounds like Champion Sue Jim's Mr. Wonderful got a major under Steve Field. That's why I like the collie community. What I don't know is somebody else does. So they went ahead and started, and Lenise Adams says he was the top producer of Smooth Champions out of a rough. But they went ahead and started Signet Collies, which Signet means family. You have a Signet ring. It's a family tradition. It's carried on through the generations. So at that point, they're at 2 generations, and they knew they were going to have a third, and they were just hoping that Joe and I would get into it. So thus started Signet. I'm actually hoping to do an interview with my dad and post it on this page. So I'm going to kind of skip over the next couple of years and give a very broad stroke, because this is my story, not their story. I come from them, but it's my story. All right, so we're going to go through a couple big national wins. In 1980, champion Verlore's Fascination in Black took Winner's Bitch and Best of Winners. Really see the body type become a little bit more compact. In 1981, Champion Signets All in the Family took Winner's Bitch, Best of Winners, and Best Smooth Puppy. And that is Edith Ann after the show, All in the Family. And Edith Ann is actually my first dog that I fully remember. I remember cuddling with her and just hanging out with her, and she was my first friend that I fully cognizantly remember. In 1985, they grew by 2 legs. Joe was born. And in 1988, yours truly was born. In 1991, champion Franchel's Royal Regency took Winner's Dog. Now, he was not owned by my mom. He was shown by her. And this is a story that Kathy Kiefer-Meyer loves to tell. So Franchel, that's Fran and Herschel Kiefer, are Kathy Kiefer-Meyer's parents, and they owned Roy at the time for Royal Regency. And Kathy said, Tess, you have to see this dog. You have to show him. He's gorgeous. And my mom went, what's a Roy? And my mom's infinite wisdom and sarcasm, what's a Roy? She met Roy, and she fell in love with him. And one of my most iconic photos was born. Let's see. That picture was taken at the 91, I think it was 91, Columbus National. I was about 3 years old. And that's a Roy, if you're ever wondering. And that really started, that was the prelude to me starting to show. Again, skipping. In 92 to 93, I started showing. In 94, I finished my first bitch. It was a Tri-Smooth bitch, Champion Signet's Family Matters. If you ever find the picture, I'm wearing a teddy bear sweater. You'll know it when you see it. In 1998, we took a hiatus. We were rethinking where we were going and how we wanted the line to be. My parents actually restarted Signet like 3 times, I think it was. They weren't afraid to stop what they were doing. They didn't like the direction they were going and restart, which please remember that's always an option. So they were restarting. And by 1998, they were on a really good path. They were a couple generations in. They could really see where they were going and where they wanted to go. And that all culminated with Champion Signet's Band of Gold going best op to best puppy. She was out of Champion Signet's Hopelessly in Love by Marna's Golden Ruler. And yeah, sorry. And my mom loved it. Hope, her mother, she was a beautiful bitch, but she had hound dog ears. She finished, and then her ears just flopped. And she just hung out with us because she was beautiful. And what she produced was even more beautiful. The virtues that came out of her, oh my gosh. So we kept Hope, thank goodness, because we got Goldie. And my mom loved the breeding so much that she went ahead and repeated it. Repeat. Pete? So in 1999, Champion Signet's Twice as Nice is born. Twice as Nice. We'll get into naming dogs in a little bit because it's actually a very fun fact about my mom and I. But it was a repeat breeding, so that's how we got Pete's name. We'll come back to Pete. In 2001, Pete had his first puppies on the ground, and that's how I got my Champion Signet Study in Black, Blackie. In Pete's litter, he actually had a Tri-Smooth sister by the name of Champion Signet's Family Entertainer, Gigi, and she turned out to be my brother's junior's dog. In 2002, I think it is, I think it was 2002, my brother took Best Junior at the National. In 2004, Pete took Best of Variety and First in Stud Dog. I don't know what number Stud Dog win that was, but he ended up retiring the trophy. In 2004, I took Best Junior. That's pretty much where we're going to kind of fill in some gaps there. So when we had Goldie, and then we had Goldie was bred to Champion Marna Showtime. I believe his name was Johnny. Carrie, is that right? Johnny? But that gave me Kisses. And with Kisses on the ground, that actually in 1999, Mother's Day, next week, gave us 6 generations on the ground at one time in one kennel in one place. Our oldest was Megan, and she was 12-ish, I want to say. And then Carrie, thank you. Yes, Johnny. Okay. And then Kisses was all of 6 weeks old, maybe 4 weeks old. She was just a bitty baby. I have that picture too. I don't know what I'm doing here. Bear with me, folks. Oh, here's a super cute picture. Ooh, glare. Let's see. Where's that picture? So that is 6 generations. There's Goldie with the head tilt beside me. I'm holding Kisses. Joe has Allie, and that's all. Always and Forever, and I forgot who the male is, but that is 6 generations there. My mom thought that that was just the coolest thing, and really wanted to make sure we got a picture of that. And I skipped a lot. I'm so sorry. I totally skipped. But sorry, I skipped. Bear with me. I'm so sorry. But that gave me Kisses. And Kisses is pivotal to my story just because she was the first rough introduced back into Signet. My mom and dad had gone from rough to smooth because that's what they both liked, and they kept up the smooths, and smooths were just easier when Joe and I were younger, and it was just easier. And I always said, I grew up saying, I want a Sheltie, I want a Sheltie. My mom's like, you're not getting a Sheltie. And I finally got her. She's like, okay, you can't have a Sheltie. No, you got to first explore every part of your breed first, so you can have a rough. She went from a small, fluffy thing to a large, fluffy thing, thinking that that would be better. It was. I loved Kisses. She was my best friend. She helped me a lot in juniors. However, and she was also the weirdest bitch. She would have full coat in the summer and no coat in the winter, which means that when she passed away in 2011, she had 16 single points. 16 single points. Yeah, because she would be in coat at all breeds in the summer when nobody else was around. So she also wasn't the prettiest thing. I picked a puppy and my mom went, okay. Yeah, that's pretty much how that one went. But Kisses actually wasn't a bridesmaid. My girl actually walked me down the aisle with my dad. So I had to have dogs in my wedding, of course, and somehow I got the church to agree to let dogs inside the building. So we had Kisses and my husband's Siberian in the church. That was very interesting. Here's a fun senior picture. Oh no, I got the glare from the light. Hang on, sorry. That's my senior picture. Kisses and Blackie. All right, so Kisses kind of brings me up to my junior's career, so I'm going to back up a little bit again. Sorry about that. So I love this photo. This is me. Oh gosh, that light. I'm so sorry. That's me, 1998 National, Virginia Beach. Larry Williford staring at me. And that is Champion Signet's Family Generations, or Ginny. She was my dad's bitch. He loved tri bitches because they're sassy. They're very feisty. If you have a tri bitch, you probably have a very sassy thing. I get jealous of the people who have nice, sweet tri bitches. All of mine have been bitches. But I love them. I love them. I can't wait to have a tri smooth bitch again because they're feisty. Anyway, so that was my third and final win to get out of novice junior at that national. And so when I first went into juniors, I had been showing in confirmation for 6 years. And I went into juniors and I was like, oh, this will be easy. Joke's on me. I was 4th out of 4. The Chris Provenzano's kids. They from Proven Hill Collies, they triplets, and they came in and they whooped my butt. I stood in the corner just chit chatting away like I was in confirmation. Do 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 do. 4 out of 4. I left the ring, and my mom just laughed at me. She's like, "Well, now you know." I went, "Yeah, yeah, now I know." And thus my competitive spirit for juniors was truly born. And that was mid-March. That picture is April 10th. So, in 30 days, I'd gotten my 3 wins. And I'd gotten that win with Larry. I'll be interested to see if he remembers this. So my mom had taught me a little trick. Ginny's ear would always fly. On my side, so I'll do it with this hand. On my side, it was always just perk up. We all have those dogs where it just perks up. So my mom taught me this trick. Really subtle, really elegant. Instead of bending down and taking the time to pinch ears and to flip it over and maybe mess her up, when her ear was flying high, my mom taught me to take the clip on the leash and just drape it over the ear to bring it down. Just drape it. And if the judge wasn't coming up to you, you just left it on the ear. And then as soon as the judge comes up, you just gently pull it off and have it over. Really slick, really polished move that my 10-year-old self was like, okay, cool. I've never been able to replicate it since. It was only with that bitch. But it was such a, it was that click for me that my mom was fantastic, spectacular. And I did it in front of Larry. I swear that's why I won the class. But coincidentally, when I was show chair of 2018, that was 20 years since my first time in the juniors ring. So in Virginia Beach. So it was kind of pivotal thing for me. That national was also, Marjorie, please don't kill me for this one, where I met Marjorie, or took my first real picture with Marjorie. Marjorie will tell a story about me when I was little, and how I went up to her when I was like 5 or 6, and I leaned on her table and I had said something really smart alecky to her about tell me about the meaning of life kind of thing. But Marjorie has always been a major influence on me and my juniors career, and just someone who's tough and doesn't take anything and is the sweetest person when you dive in to who she is and how she helps the kids, and she's a mama bear through and through. So Marjorie's always been one of my major influences. So I started showing in juniors. I went through a couple juniors dogs. I had Ginny, I had Kisses. You heard possibly Bree talk about Champion Signets Enchante. Tia was my juniors bitch for a little bit, but I kept choosing bitches. What don't you do in juniors? You don't pick bitches. So when Blackie was born, my mom had been out campaigning Pete, or pre-campaigning Pete, and I had started working with Harry, who was a big sable rough male, and who Crystal Stoner actually finished and then promptly took a group 1 later that day on him. And my mom hadn't been able to finish him for months. But it was pretty cool to get that phone call and be like, hey, Harry finished and took a group 1. Thanks, Crystal. Love you for that one. But my mom had been gone campaigning Pete, and his first puppies were on the ground, 2 males. We had a lot of dogs in the kennel at that time, a lot of males in the kennel. What don't you do in a breeding kennel? You don't keep a bunch of males. And we had a bunch of males. So we kept 2 more. And my mom was gone. So she's like, okay, I need you to work on, leash training and getting these puppies trained. And 30 minutes has already gone by. My goodness. But I had been leash training these puppies, and they were great. They were perfect. Thanksgiving, their first shows in Oh, good. You remember him, Crystal. First shows were the Biggie, Thanksgiving, 5 days of all breeds. So my mom takes Blackie in the ring. This gangly, sway-backed, big-lipped, big-headed tri-dog. He was not pretty, but my mom was determined to get a champion for Pete. So she took him in. First show, we're like, she lost. We're like, okay, it's his first show. He's a puppy. It's fine. Second show, she lost. And he starts acting up. She comes out of the ring after, it was either the second or third show. She hands him to me in a very untest-like manner. Goes, this dog is not trained. Train him better. And I went, but he's trained. I swear he's trained. Train him better. It was said with a lot of ferociousness behind it, because this puppy was making a fool of my mom, and you don't do that. So I was like, no, he'll be good with me. So I took him in the ring, and I won. 5 shows total. He was shown 3 majors. He was finished. That's how Blackie and I started. I love it. My mom just stood outside the ring and she just shook her head. She's like, oh, you had a lucky day. Oh, you had another lucky day. And I'm like, Marjorie gave him a major, actually. And as I stood there, I just smiled at my mom and I just started laughing. And she realized maybe I wasn't to be messed with either. So that's how Blackie and I started. I took this poor puppy, I think he was 7 or 8 months at the time, and started him in juniors classes where there were 20 plus, open juniors, open seniors in a class, because there was only 4 classes at that time. So, they were lasting hours, and he stood up to it. He was awesome. He worked his butt off, and we worked our butts off together to really form the relationship that we had throughout our career. And by the time 2004 rolled around, he had taken me to my first back-to-back Best Junior at All Breeds, which is in the Northeast, was incredibly hard to do. And we had a lot of our now professional handlers in juniors at that time. So there was a lot of very stiff competition, and I was showing, a smooth collie. And I had judges say, like, okay, take that dog around. Please learn your breeds. It's on the sheet that you get before the show. Come on. But he and I really started to take off. And by Thanksgiving the next year, we were at Thanksgiving, and we're having a conversation about our future and where we were going and everything. And my dad goes, we have too many males. Uh-oh. My gangly, sway-backed, big-lipped butthead of a dog is a male. And my dad said, we're going to sell Blackie. I've only run from the dinner table once in my life, and it was that moment. When I came back, I cried horribly. He and I had really, really become a team that year. And when I came back to the table, my mom was like, you need to go to the show with Michelle tomorrow. Again, it was the Biggie 5 days of Thanksgiving shows. You need to go with Michelle to the show tomorrow and watch them work. And he came home and he went, nope, he's staying. Whew, okay, good, thanks. By Christmas, I was gifted his registration papers. All the dogs were always in my parents' names. And besides Kisses, that was the only other dog that they had put my name on. It was when Bred By had to have everybody's name on it. So that's how I got to keep Blackie. Let's see. So I took Best Junior at the National in 2004. and I was number one either 2004 or 2005. I can't remember. My most embarrassing moment in dog shows. I'm sitting in the Best Junior ring. Hildy Morgan is judging, and she's staring at me and Blackie. Remember how he has big lips? Mm-hmm. He liked to turn his head to the side with a little head tilt, and he was looking at me. He was just smiling away. We're having a great time. And Hildy comes up beside me, and all of a sudden I see a big glob of drool start to leak from his mouth. Oh my God, my heart stopped. And Hildy and I just watched that big glob of drool reach the ground. She laughed and walked on. Yep. I wanted to run and hide. And then she gave me Best Junior, and I was like, okay, maybe it wasn't that bad, but I don't remember the point. I don't remember getting my ribbon or anything like that. I remember the drool. My big moment, the drool. Later that year is also the year that I broke my ankle, and thus ended a lot of sports for myself and really threw off a lot of my plans for life. But it was that year, I think, that Blackie also beat Pete one time. He beat his father. My mom didn't speak to me for about 24 hours afterwards. Yep. All right, let's see. 2006, I aged out, and that was that for juniors. I went off to college and moved down to Virginia. My freshman year, December, in between this fall and spring semesters, I actually lost my mom to cancer. She was diagnosed stage 4 colorectal cancer, which metastasized to her liver and stomach during 2005. So she passed away. Kathy Kiefer-Meyer had actually moved in with us up in Connecticut and was taking care of my mom and moved in from Indiana, and really helped my mom through chemo and surgeries and all the major stuff. And that's, what best friends do. Forever grateful to you, Kathy. So Kathy and I moved my entire house and all of our dogs down to New Jersey that year as well. For my senior year, aged out, lost mom, school, college, life, things just slowed down at Signet. After we lost mom, my dad and I just stopped. My brother wasn't home. He was in Illinois, doing, his undergrad and then his vet school. And we slowly just let the kennel, thin down. Our hearts weren't in it at that time. Dad was in it longer than mom-ish, kind of, for actual showing. But they were a team, and we were all a team together. So losing her hurt a lot, of course, as you can imagine. But we persevered. I actually have, this is her last national. This was 2005, Idaho. It was in the top 20 ring. And then she saw me at Westminster make it to finals that year as well. Ooh, that one's hard to see. So it's a lot. It's a lot. Life is a lot. So after I graduated from school, my dad said, "You're not coming home," which was fine. I had met Matt, my husband, and I didn't want to come home. But that also meant that I didn't have any dogs. We were in an apartment, so I was even further away from the collie world. And I had worked for Pete Dembo while I was in school for a little bit, just to stay in it, just to kind of stick with the fancy, and that helped. But coming out of college and not having, I had Kisses down at the apartment. Matt had actually been taking care of her and keeping her for me, but not being in the ring, not breeding, it was sad. It was hard. So then we bought our house, we got married, we lost Kisses to cancer, we brought Blackie down, we lost Blackie to Lyme's disease, and we just had a lot of hard hits in our first year. And then my dad says, well, you and your brother have equal rights to Signet, so neither of you get it. Okay, cool. Okay. Figure something else out. So I thought long and hard about what I wanted my kennel name to be and where I came from and what my heritage was, and thus started Heritage Collies. Sorry, I keep saying, oh, sorry. But we started Heritage. My dad had purchased our second dog we've ever purchased for Signet was Signet's A Timeless Hello, which we purchased from Roxanne and Dale Height, Timeless Collies. Timeless. Oh, jeez. It's a long day. Timeless Collies. So we went ahead and brought her down to Virginia with us. My dad wasn't wanting to breed at that time, at least not her. So I said, I'll take her. She's beautiful. So Matt and I bred our first litter. We bred her to an Overland dog, and that gave us our first champion, which was Champion Heritage, the Peacemaker. And in 2013, we had our second litter, which gave us our broken puppy. Unfortunately, we had Audrey stepped on Faith's leg and broke it when she was 3 or 4 weeks old. She was still a bitty baby. So my plans for a smooth puppy didn't come to fruition. And I was facing, months and months of surgeries and keeping her leg intact. So we took her sister and she went to Marnus Collies, south, I guess, with Carrie Lenhart and Ron Keller. And I have not actually had a litter since then. I have taken time off to work on my career. I have built a family of my own, and I've been focusing on my education and learning more and expanding my knowledge, and then also doing work within the CC of A. So I took this time to really grow, or try to grow as much as I can outside of breeding. And that's pretty much bringing us up to today. I actually just recently, I have a puppy barking outside. She is 4.5 months old. She is actually out of the puppy we sold to Marnus. Her name is Lily, Heritage Roadside Gardener. It was a very full circle moment for me. So I had always looked up to Ron and Marcia Keller. I mean, they were my other set of grandparents. I grew up staying at their house at Western New York shows, and their granddaughter Kelly was one of my best friends growing up. She still is. She's actually Tessa's godmother. But we would play around at shows, especially Maryland shows. There's the old Maryland site used to have a spiral staircase. So we remember, playing on that. But when Ron and Carrie asked about purchasing Hope, my mind just exploded. I was like, these people I've looked up to my entire life. I've always wanted to be like Marcia Keller. Always, always, always. Beautiful dogs, successful breeding program, thoughtful, successful breeding program with dogs that were just sweet as can be, beautiful headpieces, and their family was in it. And I was like, I want to be Marcia Keller when I grow up. Still want to be Marcia Keller when I grow up. But always was watching them. And when Ron and Carrie asked about purchasing Hope, I was like, oh my gosh, yes, of course, yes, thank you. So that was amazing. And then I find out that my dad is looking for a dog. He got remarried in 2011, November 2011, to my wonderful stepmom, Beth, and whom he had met in New Jersey. And Beth wanted a rough. So dad only had smooths. So they went in search of a rough. And they landed on a rough sable dog out of Hope, my puppy. So now my icon breeders have, let us see her. No, sorry, she's in the backyard. My icon breeders have one of my dogs, and now my dad has a puppy out of one of my dogs. It's a pretty cool moment. It was a pretty cool moment to have that happen, and to have Ron came up to me one time and he said, I can't thank you enough for her. And it just melted my heart, because it's like, are you kidding me? Absolutely. Anything. So that was pretty awesome moment. And now I have Lily, who's a out of Grand Champion Limerick's Celtic Classic, from Cookie Jones up in New Jersey. And fun fact, when we moved to New Jersey, we moved 10 minutes from Cookie and 10 minutes from Chris Provenzano. So my dad would pass Proven Hill Collies going to work every day, and I would pass Limerick Collies every day going to school. So that was pretty interesting when we were all like, oh, we're 10 minutes from each other. But Lily is out of Roadside Gardener. She received her name because my mom always wanted to name a dog Roadside Gardener. We were coming home from shows, and in New York, you drive down the parkway, and it's gorgeous wildflowers in the spring. Just gorgeous. And my mom always wanted to stop and pick flowers. Connecticut, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, in the springtime, just flowers everywhere. But it's illegal. So my mom's like, under the cover of night, we'll do it. We'll be Roadside Gardeners. And thus Roadside Gardener was started. She had a whole list of names, and she never got to use that one. So I decided, with this puppy who is, made a little full circle around back to me, decided to name her. Tess picked out the name Lily. She actually chose Rose, but I didn't want to name a puppy Rose, especially when one of my good friends has a baby named Rose. So I didn't want to end up with a Rose, and we decided on Lily, which peace and, harmony. So I wanted to go with that one. I think that's about it for my history. And I'm going to go to the questions. I'm really scared of the questions. All right. Oh, things I've done with CCVA since graduating college. Let's do that one really quick. So in 2010, I was approached by Bob Myers, who was president at that time, to ask if I would take over the yearbook. My mom had been the yearbook editor for 96, 97, 98. And she was also a bulletin editor. My dad was two-time past president. He was a show chair. He's current treasurer he's been treasurer for forever. Anybody actually have dates on that one? But Bob asked me to do yearbook. I had done yearbook since high school. I'd been editor-in-chief of roughly 5 high school and college yearbooks at that time. So I said yes, and I started and finished my first yearbook in the first year, which was 2010. And I wanted to keep on the tradition that my mom had started, which was the yearbook comes out at the following national, which, since my mom, didn't think that had been accomplished. It might have been accomplished in the early years, but definitely not anything towards the end. So I like a good challenge for myself. So I put out the 2010 through 2017 at the following national every single year. Between 2010 and 2011, I actually also completed the back issues of 2008 and 2009. So within a year and a week, I put out 4 yearbooks. I also served on a bulletin committee, and then I am currently on the National Show Rules Committee. It started after being an advisor after the 2018 National, where I was show chair, and I liked what they were doing, and I felt like my skills with word and editing might be of some help. So I asked to join, and luckily it's been a lot of fun. Love being on the committee. And then I got my junior judge's license in 2010 and my breed license in 2014. All right, Hector, you mentioned that your folks scrapped their program and started over years ago. What was the reason to go to a different direction? Do you concur with their vision for the perfect collie? So they actually scrapped their program, I believe it was 2 or 3 times, which I've kind of done myself when I get down on the fact that I don't have a current breeding program. My dad always tells me, remember, we started over and started over. It's okay to start over. It's okay to go in search of the perfect dog or what you foresee the perfect dog to be, and just keep pursuing that perfection or that ideal that you want to see in your kennel. Especially when I have only had a couple of dogs here at the house. I mean, I didn't even have a collie for, oh my gosh, like a couple of years. I didn't even have a collie. We only had the Siberian, and then my daughter was given a Sheltie. So their reason to go in a different direction was just that they didn't like where they were going to begin with. So they decided to change it. I do concur with their vision for the perfect collie. My parents were my mentors. I grew up in a very different home where the people I wanted to look to were sitting on the couch next to me. I definitely learned from other folks, and I definitely watched other kennels, and I had role models and I had mentors. But the people I relied on the most, and still do, are my parents. Just this past national in Peoria, that's sad. Should have been New York. But in Peoria, my dad and I sat there, and he's like, what do you see as your future? Where do you want to go? And I told him, and he goes, okay, let's do it. I'll help you. Let's figure it out. Who do you look to? And I told him, and we went from there, and I've already started, building on what my next steps are going to be. Thanks, Kelly. She was a great lady. Oh, Lenise, I didn't know that. Ooh, Julie, you have a Pete grandson. That's awesome. Thank you, Jeffy. I think Let Us See Her is for the puppy. She is really pretty. I'm really excited about how she's turning out, my puppy Lily, but she's in the backyard, and she ran through the brambles earlier, so she's not coming in. How do you decide on a collie pup to purchase rather than one of your own bred by? Do you use the exact same exact criteria? So that's actually a fantastic question, Kelly. The first bitch that we purchased was Biddy, who was not pretty. We didn't make a good decision with that one, but she was my brother's best friend growing up. With Audrey, a timeless hello, we decided to go ahead and purchase her because we liked who she was out of, and we didn't have anything breeding at that moment or anything that we wanted to breed. We didn't like where we were in the kennel, and we didn't want to keep up that cycle again with the whole starting over. So we decided to purchase Audrey using, yes, the same exact criteria, exact same thing that you would look at for your own dogs. I did it when I went up to Carrie's house to pick Lily. And of course, the puppy I first picked was her puppy. Looked at the puppies and went, that one. She goes, no. So I went, okay, that one, I'll take that one. So yeah, no, we use the same exact criteria and definitely tune into not only what we're looking for in that dog or bitch, but what we want to see in the future in the kennel. Thanks, Nancy. Thanks, Bob. Still longing for a Sheltie. I have a Sheltie. I have a beautiful Sheltie. He was actually from my mom's best friend up in Connecticut. Here he is with Pete Dembo and my daughter taking his first major. So I actually had Junior's Sheltie, and now I have Tim Tim, who we love. And actually, here's a picture of my daughter showing at Peoria for the first time. The ankle comes back with a vengeance from my break. This is probably one of my favorite pictures. Here she is with Lily at Marnus South. The day we picked her up. And she also did a Zoom meeting with me at work. But that was when she was only about 9 weeks at that time. Some of the breeder ed programs, they want to help them decide that. Oh, thanks, Kathy. So that's how my parents started deciding that they wanted to start over. All right. Whew, I'm getting to an hour. Let's wrap this up. Let's see. Give me your questions. Best piece of advice for a newly started junior starting out in open juniors. Relax. Enjoy it. It's supposed to be fun, then competitive. But no, truly, you need to hang out with your dog. You need to have a true relationship with your dog, and start that outside the ring. When you have that relationship, it's going to come into the ring itself. Blackie and I were great with that. Actually, when I broke my foot and he had run through the house and he landed on the bed, and I said, ow, and he dropped down and he crawled up to me because he knew, collies are so intuitive like that, but he and I had that bond. So you want to make sure you have that bond with your dog, and that starts outside the ring. Favorite show memory. So I have a lot of show memories, obviously, but probably my favorite, and it's going to be a surprise actually, is 2 years ago, I took my first group placement. I had never taken a group placement. I always had Pete against me in the ring. I always had the ugly rough with kisses. But I took my first group placement with a dog that was from my own kennel. And that was with Marnus Ray of Hope, the dog that my dad had bought from Carrie and Ron. So took a group 4. I thought the judge was out of her mind, but that's my favorite memory of my own stuff. What's one lesson you learned in juniors that you think would be beneficial for newer or current juniors? I think your question is 2 parts. So newer juniors is different from current juniors. Current juniors meaning experienced juniors. Experienced juniors need to pay attention to the judge a lot more. So, and also the placement of the dog. You want to make sure that your dog is gating, think of the national with the double wide mats, the tape down the center. The dog goes on the center of the tape, not you. Move the dog to the center. The judge shouldn't have to see what the dog is gating like. When you have the box, there's the tape in the box, put the dog's feet right on the edge. Those tiny little details are, especially for the aged out juniors judges, are what we're looking for. And those tiny details are really what's going to set you apart. But also eye contact with the judge when you're gating is good for everybody. There's either not enough or too much. 3 times, if you go around the ring, you should look up at least 3 times each mat that you hit. As you're coming back on a down and back from the judge, look up halfway, see when the hand goes up. It's a flat floor. If you're in an indoor show, where your feet are going to fall. You don't need to look at the ground. For for new juniors is definitely enjoy the experience. I mean, that goes for all juniors, but enjoy the experience, love your dogs, love what you're doing, and find somebody that you want to look up to. That 1998 National is when I first was introduced to Renee Rizzo-Beals. And she became my icon junior to be like, and she won Best Junior that day with Blue Cherokee, if I remember correctly, this big blue rough dog. And I began watching her. Creepy, I know. But she was an icon for me, and she still is. She's so calm and collected in the ring, and so poised, and really seems to love what she does with the dogs. So find somebody that you want to watch and watch them. Learn from them. Talk to them. I never talked to Renee until we were adults. It was ridiculous. But talk to them, learn from them, be friends with them. They'll share their secrets eventually. Is there anything else? There's no more questions? Really? I don't know if that's good or bad. Anybody? Let's see. I'll go into some of the past questions that people have been asked, maybe. Let's see. My influences. Hopefully some of these might actually be surprising to some people. So my parents, Marnus Collies, Marjorie Tuff. I also started watching folks like Debbie Holland. She was actually my mom's icon. I don't know if Debbie ever knew that. But we were at a Western New York show one time, and my mom and I were talking about mentors and role models and people that they want to look up to. And my mom was like, Debbie Holland's mine. I watch her kennel. I love what she does. I love her direction and how careful and precise she is. And so I began watching Debbie, and that fascination continued. Let me see, Karen Jordan. Obviously, we all know Karen Jordan for Collies Online, but she showed Pete at the 2004 National when my dad was show chair, and I think my dad was show chair. But Karen was always so calm, cool, and collected. She actually showed the first smooth that I really remember paying attention to the virtues of the dog, which was Caledonia by Candlelight. So loved watching Karen, loved watching Marion Rose Robichon, Roxanne and Dale Height, Pete Dembo. Pete Dembo was actually the one that my mom always told my brother to watch because he's tall and he could run well. And my brother was a lanky teenager who could not run well. So my mom was like, watch Pete, always watch Pete, watch Pete, watch Pete. So I began watching Pete, and then I worked for Pete, and Pete has shown a number of my dogs through the years. So that's been a lot of fun. What's the hardest thing about growing up in dogs versus starting out as an adult? So one of the hardest things about growing up in dogs, especially for me, being that I was a baby at shows, and my daughter is going to be subject to this, Logan Ruckus is subject to this, Amanda Marvella's kids are subject. It's the fact that people are going to come up to you and say, I want to change your diaper. I've seen your butt. But also, you know, even as we get older, people still see us as kids. I'm in my 30s, and I'm still only known as a kid. Brie Artizone called me Michelle Esch. I've been married almost a decade, but in her video, she called me Michelle Esch, and it's just something that it's hard to overcome. So it's hard to overcome the idea that we're no longer kids. I think Brie and Katie both pointed out that, you know, you have to kind of break the mold about how people think of you. And I've been trying to do that, but, you know, I think it's harder for me to get judging assignments actually, because people still think I'm a kid, and they don't, and I haven't been doing a lot of breeding. So, you know, that's been difficult. But as you're starting out as an adult, maybe a little too cliquey, maybe a little hard to find somebody to mentor you, even though we all say that we want to mentor somebody. You know, do you actually take the time to sit there ringside and talk to somebody versus talk to your friends? So, you know, I think that might be a challenge. But if you can have a strong mentor, you can find somebody that is going to be there for you and really be that person to guide you, like Nancy McDonald was for Katie. You know, be that person, and then you know our sport and our family, our collie family is just going to keep growing bigger and bigger. Goodness. Yes, sorry, Linnaeus, Kara too. Sorry, I didn't forget the girls. I'm sorry. All right, I've hit an hour. I'm not getting the usual questions that everybody else is. I don't know if that's good or bad, but someday you'll be glad you are still the kids. Doesn't feel like it. All right, I guess that'll be it for tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in and for listening to me blabber on and on and on about my history and heritage collies. I hope you learned something new about me. If you didn't, I'm an open book. Love to talk to you. Message me. But yeah, all right. Everybody have a great night. Good luck with your stay-at-home orders.